Hi, welcome to In the Studio. I'm Alex Silva-Sadder and I'm hosting tonight. Tonight we have what I consider a very special guest, Mr. Sterling Norman Anderson. He's a Hollywood screenwriter and he writes for television and film. And he grew up in Davis. And I would say that makes you a Davis native.
Yes.
But you were originally from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to talk about his career and your background and Davis and so forth. And I guess we'll just start off. You started out in Alabama, right?
Yeah,
So what was it that brought you to Davis originally?
Well, my mom and dad moved out here with several families to work at the Primate Center. Mm-hmm. And so there were probably 6 or 7 families that moved out here all together to work at the Primate Center. And my parents came out here first and then sent for my brother and I later.
You stayed with relatives?
Yeah. Yeah.
How long a period was that? They were out here for a few months or
a couple of years.
Really?
Yes.
Before you came?
Yes, yeah.
So then you came and you went to Davis High School and you graduated in '76 and...
Yeah. I actually was one of the first classes at WDI, which is now called Willett.
Oh.
In West.
Okay.
When I was growing up, it was called West Davis. Now it's called Central Davis, I think. It's grown so much. And I went to Emerson Junior High School.
Oh, okay.
And Davis High School.
And after that, in your book, you mentioned that you worked at the cannery.
Yeah.
Right? When it was still there.
Yeah.
Now it's just an empty lot.
Yeah.
And at what point did you know you wanted to be a writer at that age when you graduated from high school, or is that still something in the future?
No, I think I was still entertaining the idea of being a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. And, I soon found out by going and playing basketball on the East Coast that I wasn't going to be a professional basketball player. But the people that really encouraged me were my first coaches in Davis, like Coach Whitmire. He was really a big mentor of mine, Coach Taylor. And I eventually worked, Freudian slip, played for Les Curry, and he was a legendary basketball coach at Davis High. And
so then you went off to college, St. Mary, right?
Yeah.
And then you studied writing there?
My first couple of years I was a religious studies major, and I played basketball my freshman and sophomore year, and I realized that I could not write, so I decided I would declare English as a major to force myself to learn how to write. Mm-hmm. So my junior and senior year was wrought with several English courses. I had 9 Shakespeare classes in my last 2 years.
Wow.
22 English courses, I think, in my last 2 years in college. And I had this one professor I was working with, he was from Yale, and a professor from Yale who transferred to St. Mary's. He asked me why was I working so hard at, my English classes, and especially my Shakespeare classes, and he said, "You're never going to be a writer. Why are you trying so hard?" I think that was the moment that clicked for me. I was like, "I will show you."
Yeah, that was the motivation.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you move to LA to try and start the career down there first, or?
No, actually, I did martial arts rather intensely, and so all the training and trying to make the national team and stuff like that, it was during the daytime. So I had to get a job working at night. I ended up working in the restaurant business. Mm-hmm. And little did I know I was working in Berkeley in the cultural mecca of the California culinary cuisine explosion. So I got really interested in wine and food. So I knew I was from Davis, and I knew Davis had the best enology school. So I started taking classes here. But my first writing job was doing restaurant and wine reviews, mm-hmm. Food and wine reviews.
You became, now it said that you became the first bonded winemaker, African-American winemaker in California.
Yes.
So what does that mean for those of us who don't know what bonded winemaker means?
Legal.
It seems like a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, it means I was legal, registered with the ABC, alcoholic.
So you can make
alcohol
wine and nobody would
beverage.
come and say, "Oh, you're making
Yeah,
moonshine or something."
right, exactly. I was the first black winemaker in Napa Valley.
Wow. So at what point then did you shift career? I mean, it sounds like you have a successful wine career going and
Yeah.
all these things, and then, you still thinking about what he said about you're not going to be a writer, or?
You know, I had this passion to write, and I thought I was going to, be a novelist, perhaps. But I kept studying film. I just kept reading about film and getting really enamored with film. And as I was doing wine and food reviews, I started thinking perhaps maybe I could be a screenwriter. But I was studying acting as an actor, and I was studying acting at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, and did some plays in the Bay Area, like the San Francisco Shakespeare Company with Uta Hagen, and so I went to Los Angeles with the aspiration of possibly being an actor, and quickly discovered that that wasn't what I wanted to do. Because a couple of my friends, we were all starving and eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and they became stars. And just watching them modify their behavior, I just thought, nah, that's not for me. I'm not gonna.
They started to absorb the culture of
Worrying about, getting operations on their eyes and lips and how they looked on camera, and I just said, I'm not wrapped like that. I really so.
you pursued the writing aspect and
Yeah. I kind of decided I would try to do something behind the camera, and I wrote a screenplay. And the first screenplay I wrote, I gave to an agent, a friend of mine, and he said it was horrible.
as many first screenplays are.
Yeah. So I said, okay, all I knew is that I wasn't the most brilliant, and I wasn't the prettiest, but I knew I'd be the last to quit. So I just wrote another screenplay and another. But my second or third screenplay got me an invitation to the Writers Lab in Sundance, and then got me an agent. And so in Hollywood, there are a lot of, it's sort of legend that there are a lot of famous screenplays that never became films. We in Hollywood know about those screenplays, and I fortunately wrote one of them.
Oh, a legendary secret.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think it will ever be made, or?
Perhaps. It's kind of like this writer-director started out like me, trying to sell his screenplays or ideas, and he had this idea for Steve McQueen, and it never panned out or happened. So as he became more and more successful, 25 years later, he decided he would produce and direct his original screenplay. And Steve McQueen was no longer living, but Kevin Costner was, and so Lawrence Kasdan made The Bodyguard.
Oh, wow.
That was originally written for Steve McQueen.
So maybe in a few more years?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, wow. So let's see. You're quite a Renaissance man. You're now in Hollywood. You've had some success because you've gotten an agent. You've been invited to workshops. I assume you're making your living as a writer now, right? So at what point did you finally kind of break through and actually have a work? Not just a lot of it was rewriting and spec scripts and so on.
Yeah.
So when was your first sort of big break, I guess, where they bought something and produced it? And
it was interesting. The first screenplay that was kind of given to me as a screenplay to study, a friend of mine, his agency helped sell the screenplay, and he sent it to me as a joke. And he said, "What'd you think of it?" And I said, "Oh, I thought it was okay." He said, "It sold for $3 million. And as I read that screenplay, I was reading it thinking, oh, I could fix that, and I could do this, and I could do that better. And something clicked inside me, and I realized that I could read screenplays and make them better. Although that screenplay was called, The Basic Instinct. So I don't think Joe Esterhaus thought I could fix his screenplay.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But so my first few years after I got hired to write a screenplay, my first few years, all I did was I primarily rewrote screenplays, and I rewrote a lot of them. And I had done this 4 or 5 movies with this one producer, Robert Greenwald. He won an Emmy for directing Farrah Fawcett and The Burning Bed. Mm-hmm. In fact, that won her only Emmy. And I'd done about probably 3 to 5 movies with him, and he said, you know, you're the best kept secret in Hollywood, because he kept hiring me to fix screenplays. Oh. And I said, you know, I don't want to be the best kept secret in Hollywood. Although there are a lot of really successful screenwriters who just do what's called script doctoring, rewrites. Mm-hmm. Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, yeah, he primarily does rewrites. Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia.
Yeah, I heard she's one of the super doctors.
One of the most successful, rewriters in Hollywood. And so, but I didn't want to kind of go that route. I didn't want to be a secret. So I started having aspirations of having my name on a screenplay or on a project.
So eventually you wind up transition. Well, did you start mainly with features, or were you always kind of back and forth with television and features?
Only features.
Only features. Yeah. So at what point then did you make the transition to television? Because you've written for Medium, The Heist, The Unit, I mean, all these big shows. So it's you know, like, how did you make that crossover?
That's a great question. Well, I wrote a movie thinking that it was going to be a feature film. And Les Moonves, the president of CBS, he actually bought it to be a television movie. And fortunately, it was so successful. They had an amazing cast of Diane Weiss, Sidney Poitier, Mary Louise Parker. Mm-hmm. And it was so successful, it sort of vaulted me to being what's called an A-list Movie of the Week writer. I became the highest paid Movie of the Week writer in Hollywood, and I didn't get to enjoy that very long because with reality TV and 9/11, Movies of the Week just disappeared in smoke. And my agent kept saying, you know, write a television pilot. And I'm like, leave me alone. And he goes, no, you should write a television pilot. So I went from like being a really successful Movie of the Week writer to an out-of-work writer. And I tell, you know, students all the time that, you know, I didn't go from making $20,000 to $18,000 or 18 to 15. I went from making, you know, 6-figure salary to nothing. So, you know, I hit the panic button. And fortunately, a friend of mine was a successful animation writer. She had created a TV show called Rugrats and Thornberrys. Yeah. So I called her up and she said, absolutely, come on down, we'll put you to work. And that helped me sort of at least put food on the table. Then I wrote a pilot, just an idea, 1-hour drama that I had, and gave it to my agent. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he got a call and said, this guy named David Mamet wants to meet with you. And that was interesting. But he said, David Mamet wants to meet you for a breakfast. And on the way to meeting Mamet, I got lost about 16 times.
This is before the Google Map on your phone and all that stuff, right?
I was so nervous. And I finally got there and sat down in front of this, you know, icon of a writer. And the only thing we talked about was martial arts.
Right, he's a big martial arts. You're fifth degree black belt, right? I mean, you were talking earlier about making the national. You were seriously a martial artist.
Yeah.
And he's red belt, right? Isn't that another one of his films?
He's a very devoted martial artist, and so we just talked about martial arts. And at the end of breakfast, he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'll see you on the set next week."
Well, I'm going to come back to that, but the Noah Dearborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so people get an idea of how successful that actually was, because you were telling me earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain again about the ratings and how it compared to some things that, you know, 'cause
Yeah.
not a lot of people may have seen the movie.
Yeah, it was at the time it was I think the fourth or fifth most successful television movie in history, and so the numbers were staggering. A hit movie, a hit television show now, you have to land between an 8 and 12 share. That means you're going to be on. I'm thinking CSI when it first was such a big show. It was probably pulled in about a 16 share. Dances with Stars pulled in about a 16, 17. And that phenomenal numbers.
Right.
And
Huge successes.
yeah, and Noah Dearborn we got a 26, 29, which it was almost a 30 share. Yeah.
Right, but near the all-time top, like you
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
And then you went to zero.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, now you're with David Mamet, and you're like, talk about something, and then you're hired.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It translates to about 30 million people watched it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So you're working with David Mamet on the unit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the show, right? And do you have any? I know that there are crew members that want to know any crazy stories about David Mamet because he's a legend.
There's hundreds of them.
How about just one?
How about one?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's hard. That's,
Anything, because we don't know.
Okay, well, the most embarrassing moment for me was we were passing in the hallway in the morning, and I stopped him and I said, "Hey, Dave, I just want to. I always had this idea that I would write a play one day. You're a Nobel Prize-winning playwright. So, you have any tips on how to write a play?" And he looks at me and goes, "You go write it." And I was like, "Okay," and I just kind of turned around and shuffled away. That was my personal Mamet story. He also when I turned in my first episode, we got to produce our own episodes, which was fantastic. When it was our episode, we had to write it, get it approved from the network and studio, and then we stuck with it in casting. Then we went on Tech Scout and and then we had to go read through. And then while it was being filmed, we had to be on the set.
And this is unusual.
Yeah,
right?
very unusual. Yeah,
Very unusual. Usually they tell the writers to go off. And
Stay in the
hide
writer.
somewhere.
Yeah, hide. Yeah. On Medium, we were not allowed to step outside the writer's room. But on the unit, it was great because it was a great experience. You got to produce your own episodes. So, I walked in and to a phenomenal experience.
Amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
So the writer's room, this is one thing that maybe people don't realize, but on TV shows, I guess nowadays everything, because of the internet, people are more aware of how things work. But, a feature, you have one writer, maybe two. And in television, they have a room full of people, but in the end, the credits usually on an episode, you'll see one name or two written by. So how does that work? Because I think there are probably a lot of people who don't understand how that process for television.
Yeah, on a 1-hour drama, I usually have about 6 to 10 writers, and you do about 26 shows, 26 episodes. So you cycle up every 2 or 3 episodes. So on the unit, we would break down in the writer's room with 8 writers our 4 episodes. And Mamet and Sean Ryan would say, "Okay, you two go write episode 2, and you two go write episode 3. And my first year on the unit, I was the only person allowed to have be the only writer other than Mamet. So
Wow.
yeah, so
A lot of pressure? Or?
yeah, it was a lot of pressure. We had all these award-winning writers from West Wing, ER, New York Undercover, and they were big-time writers. And I was called a baby writer. Although I had written, I was called a baby witer on the set.
Because you were new to television.
I was new to television. And so Mamet said, "Oh yeah, you can go write your own episodes," and that didn't make me very popular. Yeah. He
It's
also
all that martial arts, right?
yeah, exactly. He was really generous with me. He let me create characters that were recurring, And while I was not writing my own episodes, he let me write on like 4 or 5 episodes and create other episodes for other writers.
So, and you're all collaborating on the overall arcs and that go
Yes.
through the season and so forth. And that's pretty much why they have a writer's room, right? Is to all...
Yeah, our television show was not serial. It was self-contained, so we had a beginning and an end. So
Each
you had
episode.
to, you had to break down your A story, like go catch the criminal, and your B story, which is the lives of
The characters through the season.
Yeah. And the C stories are their children get trouble in school, got caught with drugs and things like that. So B and C stories continue, but the A story had to start and end each episode.
Okay, that's good. So now people have an idea.
Yeah,
All the aspiring writers. Are there any sort of misconceptions that people have about? I guess you already addressed that. I think. About the way the writers' room works, because I'm gonna have to edit this part out.
No. That's a great question. First of all, let me tell you about comedy. It's brutal. It's brutal. I sold a television show, comedy show, and so I'm not a comedy writer. They asked me to come in and sit in on the first read through, and they are working on one joke until lunchtime. And so they're pitching a better joke. And at lunchtime, I was worn out. They're still on one joke. So by the time you see 2.5 Men, you hear the laughing. They've worked on that one joke for 2 or 3 days, and it's brutal.
To get it to the best possible state?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hardest writing. Comedy writing is the hardest writing. And these guys are like throwing knives at each other, seriously, because you have to come up with the best joke, and it's very competitive. 1 hour dramas are more like, I'm here to help you. Hey, are you stuck? How about this? What about that? One of the misconceptions in the writer's room is that every idea is a good idea, and it's not. On Medium, out of all the ideas, I'd say out of 100 ideas that we put on the table, probably about 10 got to go to air.
Actually go through.
Yeah. So on Medium, we always say, the joke was, boy, we've got about 90 CSIs and Criminal Minds there on the floor because it just didn't fit our show.
That show.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the process of writing, because obviously if you're writing and rewriting and all that, could you give us a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first started, I read a quote by Picasso, and it said, even if I don't mix any colors or pick up a paintbrush, I sit in front of an easel for 6 hours a day. And that's how I started. I would just sit there. And just from doing that and learning that discipline of not getting out of my chair, not going outside, not mowing the lawn, it helped me in the writer's room because you're on the set 12 hours a day, sometimes 8 to 12 hours a day. You're just working on lines and dialogue, and so the orientation helped me. And even today, I try to devote at least 4 to 6 hours just sitting there. Even if I don't write, just sit there, because writing's work. And I always tell people, professional writers, we write to think. We don't think to write. So when Mamet says, go in there and rewrite your episode by 12 o'clock or else you're fired, you can't go in your office and think.
Right. So you've got to just get it out, work it out on the page as you're doing it.
Just start.
The process is the discovery.
Even if it makes no sense, just start writing. And that's how I work. I write to think. I'll draw boxes. I'll just write names, and it just builds from there. But if you think to write, you'll be thinking all day long and all week long, and that's why a lot of writers go,
Takes me a year or 2 years to work on something, and then,
and that's another misconception, is that you get to spend that long. I always ask young writers, I go, well, how long did it take you to write that feature film? They say, 2 years. well, when we get hired to write a screenplay, we get only 10 to 12 weeks to, and in the writer's room on a TV show, we get 8 days to have a fully executed screenplay. So you can't.
Right, spend all that time thinking about everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're getting close to the end here, so we're running out of time already. There's so much I want to talk about. Let's see. Okay, so you're back in Davis. What prompted you to return to Davis, and what are you working on now?
Well, I'm actually writing a movie, really exciting. I just finished the Gabby Douglas story, which aired on Lifetime, but I'm writing a movie about the Molina brothers, Benji, Yadier, and Jose. Their father sort of cut down a sugarcane field in Puerto Rico to build a baseball diamond for kids to get off the streets. And from that diamond came perennial all-stars and Hall of Famers, and 3 sons that all made it to the major leagues. It's really exciting. But in Davis, my passion is in mentoring young writers and telling people about the movie business. Because you don't just have to be a writer. You can be a camera operator. The best writer on any show is an editor in the editing bay. You can direct. You can be a sound person. Boombox. Everybody is valuable on the set. So, and you think about one show. The reason you love to have a show reach the air is you employ 200 people. Catering, traveling, so that's what's really exciting. But in Davis, my passion and I want to build something like a screenwriting academy, because mostly screenwriting is taught by failed writers, and so I want to change the landscape of that. I think Davis is a really good place to start building something like that and giving back to the community. Had I not moved to Davis, I would have not had the modicum of success, or all the success I've had. Davis gave a lot to me. Just being here and having coaches, say you can do it, and teachers say you can do it. My geometry teacher, Tashima, Mr. Tashima, and like I said, Whitmire, he was the first person to say, hey, get down there and do it, So, plus I love the town, So I love being here.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Yeah. And I know you'll have perhaps a chance to hear more, because I think he might be doing a radio show as well. We'll see.
Hopefully, that'd
convince
be great.
him. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and that about wraps it up. Sterling has a book. It's called Beyond Screenwriting. If you'd like to learn more about the behind-the-scenes writing process in Hollywood, and I have the book myself. I actually had it before I ever met Sterling, and it's very good. And you're also working on a new book as well that will be coming out at some point, probably this year, next year.
Yeah, this year.
And there's a website that you can visit as well. It's called sterlingandersonwriter.com, and I believe that's up or will be up on the lower third there. Thank you very much, Sterling.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
That's all for this evening.